You're listening to the Restoration Podcast, conversations of hope and healing. Join us as we talk about subjects dealing with ministry, faith, everyday life, and other hot topics. Our prayer is that these conversations bring encouragement to your life. Pastor Jonathan, welcome.
Pastor Aaron, thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to do this. I know you're a busy guy. At the time of this, you're in town because you're preaching here at Restoration Church this weekend. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to hearing you preach in Spanish for our bilingual service. Is that happening, right?
Yeah, that's totally happening.
No, I'm kidding.
I think I speak in English, and then there's some kind of magic device that translates it into Spanish.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's how it works. No, we're looking forward to it. How often do you preach at a local Iowa church on Sundays? Do you do that regularly, or?
Yeah, so what I've done this last year, because I've been in office for about 15 months now,
Yep.
And so my wife and I have scheduled one Sunday off where I'm not on the road, but almost every Sunday I'm in a different church, and most of the time that's preaching, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the grand opening of a church, or it's their launch Sunday. So, of course, the pastor's going to preach that Sunday, and I just want to be there to encourage them on that exciting day. So, in fact, this past Sunday, I was at Eternity Church as they had their first service in their new building.
Oh, it's open. That's awesome. Yeah. That's exciting. That's in the Des Moines area?
It is.
Correct?
Yeah, Johnston specifically.
That's right. That's exciting. That's cool. And I'm assuming... Pastor Doug Clay was on, and I asked him a similar question, but on the national level, but I'm going to ask you on the state level or district level. Every church in our district is so different.
Yes.
But isn't that beautiful, though?
It's beautiful.
Right?
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the diversity, sometimes we think of diversity in terms of race or sex, but to think about the diversity of our movement, it's spectacular, honestly, from small church to mega church to everything in between, and then even what each of those at different levels look like. It's a really cool experience to get to see that and to worship with people on Sundays.
Yeah, and the goal is the same for whether you have less than 100 or if you've got over 1,000. It's preaching the gospel, it's seeking, saving the lost, and I think that's so cool. I had a similar experience with that before I was worship pastor, I was a school teacher, band and elementary music, and I'm from Houston, Texas. Okay. And so I'm a product of like a big, successful Texas band program. I don't know if you're aware of that, but the band programs down there are like top notch.
Sure.
Not being biased, it's the truth. But so anyway, I'm used to that. Then I go to Evangel, I graduate, and I'm ready to be in charge of a big band program, right? And then all these openings are in these towns I've never heard of in my life. And I go, I apply, and it's like a small, tiny town that's got one main road. And that's when I realized that, those students need a good teaching as well, just the same as the big, and the church is the same way. Yep. Whether you got 1,000, less than 100, 50, 20, whatever, you need a good pastor, you need a good leader. And I think there's people that are called to be teachers in rural districts, people that are called to be teachers in those big programs. Some people, they want that. They love the smallness of that. I enjoyed it. I don't know if I would be there long term, but same thing with churches. I think there's a certain person that God has called to pastor the church of 1,000, of 100, everything in between, I think.
For sure. An example of that is Tom and Rhonda Poole. Mm-hmm. They pastor a church the Assembly of God Church in Linville. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I were heading to a church one Sunday morning, and we realized that Linville was on the way. So we just stopped in that Sunday, walked into their service. I thought that
you were superintendent at the time?
Yeah. I mean, this is just a few months ago.
How would they feel seeing the superintendent just walk in?
I've done this a couple times. I'll come back to that story. I'll tell you. I'm going to interrupt that story for this.
Sure.
I've done this a couple times now. One time I walked into a church on the way to another church, and I was like, "Hey, Pastor Lee Havmeyer." Actually, sure. I'm like, "Hey, I'm so excited to preach here this morning." And like the look on his face is like, "Really, you want to?" And I said, "Man, actually, I'm on my way to another church."
And you saw the relief. Oh,
yeah, I saw that. Yeah. But no, it is just fun just to pop in. Mm-hmm. Sometimes on the way when there's a church on the way, and so my wife and I have done this a couple times now, and really the heart. So going back to the Linville story, I thought I saw on the sign that their service started at 10:15. It's like 5 till 10. And I thought, we'll just pop in real quick, hug their necks, pray with them, and then continue on the road. Well, I didn't realize the service started at 10. And so we're 5 minutes before their service starts. Their auditorium is packed, and it's rocking. I mean, just the liveliness of and the atmosphere of that service. So to your point, there are some people in smaller towns that are absolutely crushing it.
Oh, yes.
Like they own it.
Yes.
They love it. They've been in those communities.
Yep.
They're well respected, and they're pastoring not just the people who show up on Sundays, but the entire community.
Yeah,
and
the entire community.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So I get to be there next month and preach in that church. And
Preach for real this time.
Preach for real this time, and not just pop in, pray, and then pop out.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. So I wanted to share a story. You probably don't remember this, but you got elected, was it in 2024?
Yes.
Council? Okay. So we do a thing in our district called Refresh, which is for our next gen leaders and volunteers, youth pastors, kid pastors, right? And you were there this past 2025. And I had the pleasure of being on the worship team. Thankful for that experience. Okay. And it was before we were starting the first opening service, and we're in the green room with Pastor Ryan and the host and the team and the guest speaker. We're going through the flow, just go this, whatever, going through details, And you walked into the room. You probably don't remember this, but I never forgot it. You walked into the room, and just because of space that was available, you stood next to me, okay? All right, I had no idea who you were, okay? I did not recognize you. I think, I'm assuming it had to be cold. It was Des Moines in January, so I'm pretty sure you were wearing a beanie.
Yeah.
I had no idea who you were, and so when you stood next to me, in my mind, I was like, who is this guy? And why did he stand next to me? I'm like, this is probably some random member of New Hope, just, as a volunteer, And you tried to make conversation with me, like you're supposed to, and it was the most awkward exchange. And I was like, okay, and then I left the room, and then when I replayed your face in my mind, it hit me who you were afterwards. So I called my wife. I was like, Tori, the most awkward thing just happened with the new superintendent, and I told her what I just told you, and she's like, I'm embarrassed myself. And she's like, you need to be better with faces and names. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So, but yeah, I'm thankful we're making up for that exchange with this.
That's hilarious. Yeah, like you said, I don't even remember that.
Exactly.
And, I'm bald-headed, so there's not much that I can do with my hair except for just shave it closer. Yeah. But the beanie does. It's a game changer. So
yeah. But so as superintendent of the Iowa network, what is it you do? Like, it's not like I know because I'm a third generation Assemblies member, and I'm thankful for that. But I think some people don't understand what it is you do. I know that it's not you just twiddling your thumbs telling pastors how to run their church. It is not that at all, correct? So what is it you do as superintendent?
Yeah, so I think to put some different language to it, because some people don't understand.
Yep.
I hate even on an airplane if somebody says, what do you do? And that's such a difficult question.
How do you answer that?
Right.
Yeah.
And so because for me to say I'm a pastor, then the next question is, well, what church do you pastor? And it's not specifically that. So depending on the frame of reference or the perspective that I think the person may be coming from, then if there's no church background, I would just say I'm the president of a corporation or of a collection of Assemblies of God churches in Iowa. And if somebody has a Christian background, then I'll talk about how I'm an overseer of a network of churches in Iowa. We have 113 churches, 480 credential holders across the state of Iowa. And honestly, to give oversight to that, one of the things that our office does is handles the credentials of ministers. The not so fun thing that we get to do is handling the discipline of ministers. But really, primarily a vision caster for our state. And one of the things that you'll hear me talk about tomorrow is we have 38 counties out of 99 in Iowa that don't have an Assemblies of God church. And so we just met with all presbyters, all staff,
other overseers.
Other overseers. Yeah, thank you for that. I met with them on Monday and Tuesday, and we just we listened to some incredible content from Jared Strong, the Church Multiplication Network director. He poured into us, invested in us, and then we took some time to dream. And then we wrapped up that time on Tuesday, literally with a 2-hour prayer meeting. And I know sometimes when people say, hey, come to the prayer meeting, there's like 5 minutes of prayer and the rest of it's something else. But honestly, the leaders, the spiritual elders of our movement spent 2 hours praying for our sections, how we're divided up as a state, praying over the leadership in each of those sections for our pastors, and praying that the Lord would raise up more workers for the harvest field. So that's a summation of it. I'm traveling each weekend, almost every weekend, in a different church, encouraging pastors and giving oversight to our district office, which is in the Des Moines area.
Yeah, and so you have a pretty good relationship with all of our pastors in the network, correct? It's not like he's in an office in Des Moines and like his hands off, but it's also not like you're telling them how to run their church either, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're there to encourage them and give guidance and all that.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the way that we're structured is many of our churches are what's called general council status, and so they govern themselves.
Yep.
They're autonomous churches, and so our role is to come alongside them, encourage them, and then again, the credentials that portion would be done from our office.
Yeah. My home pastor back in Houston, J. Alfaro, he was recently elected as superintendent of that district down there. You probably know him or heard that name. It was funny because I when I visited Houston, I went to the office and he'd show me around and stuff. I was like, congratulations, it was awesome. He's like, yeah, man, I mean, it was we were so excited. And he's like, the honeymoon phase, it lasted for like a week. And then all these other difficult decisions you don't think about came to my desk, and I was like, oh, this is part of it too,
Sure.
And like you said, back to the comparison of something that's not AG or church related. Think of a school district, superintendent of a school district. They have a lot of decisions they've got to make, and it can always be seen as like, no matter what decision you make, there's no way to please everybody, and it's that way in the local church too with the pastor.
Sure.
And so it's really important to have that pipeline from the district office or the main office to the local pastors. And I do want to say that too is that I've been in Iowa for 4 years now, believe it or not. And I've seen you. I mean, I need more fingers on one hand to count, how many times I've seen you, Pastor Ryan, our next gen director in charge of our youth and stuff. I've seen him a lot. And so I'm thankful to be in a district where we see y'all and we connect. You know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
And it's not just like distant, like I don't even know who our guy in charge is,
Sure.
And so I'm thankful for that. And I do want to apologize because this past network council where all our ministers get together was your first one, as I wasn't there. Sorry. It wasn't because it was you, but there was another, my mom was in town, and so Pastor Johnny's like, you need to be with family rather than sit in meetings and stuff, and I appreciated that. But I heard it went well.
It was amazing.
Was it awesome?
It really was.
Yeah.
And we had some great debriefings after network council with, just the number of positive text that I received.
That's good.
Meeting with our sectional leaders, sectional presbyters in our state afterwards, and just celebrating what the Lord did. It seriously was miraculous. And there are some things that we look for in a local church, right? And in some settings, like this will be the first time that I've been to Restoration Church on a Sunday morning in a long time. I came here when we were missionaries to India.
That's right.
But it's been a minute.
We'll get to your story, but
That's
right.
But it's been a minute since I've been here on a Sunday morning. And churches like yours that have 3 services, it's a tight turnaround.
Yeah,
I think Pastor Johnny was saying like 15 minutes in
Correct.
between one of the services. So what I'm about to say won't necessarily apply to Restoration Church, but when other churches don't have such a tight turnaround, and people stick around rather than rush out, like it's just a sign of health.
Oh, yeah.
That people love each other, that they want to be around each other. And one of the things that we saw at Network Council is, man, it was late into the evening after services before many people left.
That's good.
The lobby at Reach Church was just full, even until 10:30 at night.
Yeah, that's what you want to see.
And so that was fun on a practical level. On a spiritual level, God just moved mightily. And I told some people, like, I'm not smart enough or creative enough to have made what happened happen at Network Council, but there was just this incredible, beautiful display of unity, and the Spirit just marked us for those couple of days and just graced us with His presence. I'm very, very grateful for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And our staff had nothing but great things to say about it. And it was at the time a newer church. They haven't been open that long at that location, and so that was awesome. I think we had a few get credentialed from our staff. I can't remember, but there's always someone that I see, like an evangel friend or something. I'm like, oh, I know that person, because the AG world's really small. But we referenced this a second ago. But how did you land as superintendent? What is your what was the road that led you to that? You didn't start as superintendent. You were a pastor. You were a missionary. So I don't even think I remember your order of what you and your wife have done. So
yeah. So I graduated from Central Bible College in
CBC.
Springfield, Missouri.
Now Evangel. No,
right, yeah.
It's
Now
still
it's
CBC.
consolidated.
Yeah.
That's not still CBC. It's done. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah, Memphis. Okay,
I grew up in Memphis. My wife grew up in Topeka, Kansas. We met at Central Bible College, and it was a true case of ring before spring or your money back for my wife. So I was a senior. She transferred in as a freshman, and that's when I met her, and it was love at first sight. And 9 months later, we got married. And so, did you hear that? I mean, you said you went to Evangel?
Correct.
Yeah, so surely you heard Ring Before Spring.
Oh, of
or
course.
Back.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't fall in that category, by the way. I did meet my wife at Evangel. Thankful. One of the best things about me going to Evangel, but it wasn't that quick. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah. So it's quick for us, but so I graduated in 2002. We got married that fall.
I was in second grade. All right, continue.
Thank you.
02. Yeah, continue though. You're welcome.
Second grade. It's impressive.
I was working on graduating into third grade. You were graduating from Bible school.
Hey, there you go. So my wife transferred from CBC to Cox Nursing School. And so we stuck around in Springfield for about a year while she was finishing school. And then we moved up to Des Moines and started out at a church called Christian Life Assembly. Started out as kids pastors, and then the youth and worship pastor resigned right when we got there. Not because we got there, but he was getting married. His wife was not from that church, and they wanted to go to a place where it was new for them together rather than her coming into an environment where he already knew everybody and then she didn't. So it's kind of the backstory to that. So the lead pastor called me into his office, and he said, "Hey, you're going to lead the youth." And I thought, you've got the wrong guy. I'm not youth pastor material. I'm not cool. I don't dress cool. I don't have cool hair. I don't even have any hair. And yet I stepped into that environment, and the Lord helped us and just birthed a huge passion for the teenagers in our church. So fast forward a few months, and we ended up transitioning from kids into youth and worship, and then the church hired a children's pastor. We were on staff there for 3 years. And then we itinerated for a year and went to India as Assemblies of God World Missionaries. So we served one term there and then returned from India to be the state Chi Alpha directors. We served in that role for 5 years. There were no Chi Alphas when we started. So you can imagine returning home from India, going to churches and saying you're the state Chi Alpha director, and people naturally would ask, well, what campuses are we on? We'd say, well, not on any. And they'd say, so you're the director of nothing. That's amazing. Let me get my checkbook out and let me go online and make a donation to your ministry. But the Lord just blessed that season. And honestly, after 5 years in that role, we were on 9 different campuses across the state. Currently, we're on 3. Drake University, Iowa State University, and the University of Northern Iowa. And this year, each of those campuses are experiencing record numbers. That's awesome. So that is so encouraging. I mean, all 3 of them are experiencing the best year that they've ever had starting this fall. So we left Chi Alpha, planted a church in Waverly, and pastored that church for 10 years. That was an amazing season for our family. September 2023, my wife and I both individually began sensing a stirring that God had something different for us. 2023 was the strongest year that we had ever had as a church. And yet there was just something stirring in us that God had something different. So I didn't want to say anything to her. Our kids lived in Waverly. But one day we're sitting in the living room, and she begins to say something, and she stopped herself. And I said, go on and say it. And it became clear that the Lord had been speaking to both of us individually, and we didn't even know that was happening. And so then we went on a journey of praying and fasting from September through December. We met with mentors. We're like, are we crazy? You know? Yeah. And January 4th, I went into our regularly scheduled board meeting. And I said to the board, we looked at the dashboard. There were metrics that we celebrated as a church. We looked at those quarterly and pulled that up. We celebrated again. It was the strongest year that we had ever had as a church. And then I said, I'm out. And they said, where are you going to go? And what are you going to do? I said, I have no idea. We just believe that the Lord has asked us to take this step of faith. And Pastor Aaron, I can't tell you how confident we were in the Lord in that season. We didn't run from anything. We still love the church. Pastor Matt Loomis is there now, and the church is growing and thriving. We love those people. I mean, 10 years of our lives were dedicated there. And yet through that process, we had no idea, honestly, what was next. And but yet there was just incredible confidence. I remember being at the Church Multiplication Network conference in Houston, Texas.
At Grace, yep.
Yeah, at Grace in 2024. And that would have been around March. I think it would have been around March. And there was a guy named Darren Poley that coached me for the last 4 years that I was at Cross Point. And we're sitting across the table with he and his wife, Jane. And he said, in a few weeks, you're not going to have a job. He's like, are you okay? And I said, Darren, I don't know how to tell you how okay that we are. Like, we are so confident that the Lord has asked us to take this step of faith. And while we have no idea what the answer is, he's been good and faithful in every season, and he's going to continue to be good and faithful. And just a little bit of backstory, 2024 was not an election year for the superintendent. So there was no part of our conversation in September 2023 that thought, hey, if we resign and we do all of this right, then maybe we could become the next superintendents in Iowa. Honestly, my wife and I thought we were going to be leaving the state to go work for a missions organization, raise funds, do something in that area. And so there was none of the decision making thought that we were going to that I was going to step into the role of superintendent. And so having that conversation with Darren, we went into the service that night, and Red Rocks was leading worship. And they have two songs that one of them I had never heard before. And the second one, so they went straight from that into Good Plans. And the first one was something like, You've Never Failed Me Yet.
Oh, There's No Way.
There's No Way. That's the one. So I'd never heard that song before. They're singing the song, there's no way you're ever going to let me down. You never have, you never will, and you won't start now. I know my breakthrough's coming. It's only a matter of time. I know my healing's coming. It's only a matter of time. I know my answer's coming. It's only a matter of time. And Darren looks down the aisle at me, and he's like, this is just what you were saying
this is you,
at dinner. And so what's fun is that the Spirit of God had put this song into my spirit that I didn't even know that somebody had recorded. And it was just confirmation for us. And it went straight from that song into Good Plans. And so my wife and I, in the midst of the unknown, it's easy for me, Pastor Aaron, if you come to me and you say, I feel like the Lord's asking me to take a step of faith, but I don't know what's next. And I just wish I had this manual that I could read, that the Lord would show what's next. And as a pastor, it's super easy to be like, bro, just pray. The Lord will speak to you. And it's so much funner on this end saying that to you. But then when you're on the receiving end of it and you're having to eat the words that you've told to people for decades, and yet it was sincere. Like, we just saw the goodness of God, the faithfulness of God. So April 14th, the church elected a new pastor, April of 2024. April 28th, 2024 was my last Sunday at the church. And April 29th, 2024, I was elected to be the superintendent of Iowa. And so less than a day of uncertainty for us. And so my wife and I look back on that season. It was a faith builder for us and for our kids. And I believe it was a faith builder for the church that we left as well, because they knew that what we were saying was true. And then they were able to see how the Lord orchestrated all of that and worked it out.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you're right that as pastors, it's so easy. It's probably one of the go-to responses when people come to us for counsel and they're like, I need to make a decision, or I'm at a crossroad. What should I do? And we immediately want to be like, pray about it, which you should. The word says pray without ceasing. But it's easy to be on, like you said, that side of giving that counsel. But when it's flipped and you're in that in between, it's so difficult to do. And that's not your go-to.
For sure.
Which explains why people come to you asking for counsel. And I just think that story is amazing because, like you said, all this unknown, I don't know, and you said less than a day is what you had to wait through for that to happen. I think that's amazing. And as superintendent now or overseer of Iowa, I think that story may also encourage other pastors who are at a crossroad as well. And I'm sure that's something you maybe go to as well, is share that as well. But speaking of the Iowa network, what gets you excited about the future of Iowa? You mentioned a little earlier about some of these areas that don't have an Assemblies of God church, and we're starting that process or we're at least praying and asking the Lord to guide us of how to get churches there. But what else excites you about the near future? Because you've been superintendent for just how long? 15 months, you said?
Yeah, 15 months.
So what excites you about the future?
Yeah, great question. There are a couple of things that are super exciting for me. And one is on Monday and Tuesday, meeting with our spiritual elders and denominational leaders for our state, dreaming. There's this heart from just that group in the room to see 48 churches planted in the next few years. Like, put that in perspective. We have 113 churches currently right now. And in that room, people are saying, I believe the Lord's speaking to me to have a church planted in this community. And one person said it took a tremendous amount of courage for him to voice this out loud. But he said, I believe the Lord's speaking to me to plant 20 churches in the next 20 years. And I just love it.
We're trying to do 5 here.
I love it. In the next
area.
10 years, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's absolutely incredible. And so I think as we do our part, it's going to be incredible to see what the Lord does. One of the statistics that was shared with us on Monday by Jared Strong was that 80% of the salvations for our movement in the United States came from churches that were planted within the last 5 years.
Wow.
So think about that. Like 80% of the people who were saved in our movement, their salvation took place in a church under 5 years old. And so I think part of the task that I have as a leader is to communicate to existing churches, we value you so much. And there are 1.7 million people, over 1.7 million people in our state, according to ARDA, 1.7 million people who are considered unclaimed. That means they have no religious affiliation whatsoever, and most likely their parents have no religious affiliation. And 1.7. And so if we're going to reach those 1.7 million, that doesn't take into account all the people who are nominal Christians or who are far from God, but these are people who are completely unclaimed. If we're going to reach them, it's going to take all of us. It's going to take the 100-year-old churches. It's going to take the 50-year-old churches. It's going to take the 5-year-old churches and the church plants to reach those 1.7 million. So I think one of the greatest tasks that I have ahead of me is to communicate to the pastor who's been so faithful in their church and their town for years. We value you. Like, you are critical to the mission of the gospel advancing in our state and for the lost people to get saved and the 3.4 billion people around the planet who have never one time heard the name of Jesus. We need you and church planting. And so the task ahead of me is that as we talk so passionately about church planting moving forward, that the pastors over here who aren't planting churches don't hear wah, 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 or hear what about us, but instead all of us collectively go, no, it's going to take all of us to accomplish this mission.
Yeah, Pastor Doug Clay had a great line when he was on, and I asked him the same question, but again on the national level. And he said he's encouraged because there is such a strong emphasis on church multiplication right now in our fellowship nationwide. And he had a great line. What he said was, not every church can become a mega church, right? And not every pastor is called to be a mega pastor. There are people that are called to do that, and there are churches that are meant to do that, right? Nothing against mega churches. They're doing the work too, right? But he said, but every church can multiply, is what he said.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, you have to, like, what was the number? How many do we want to plant in the state? You said
from that group, 48. There were 48 church. 48.
That doesn't mean all 48 is on one pastor, right? But if, for example, Restoration Church wants to plant 5, even if we planted 2 of the 5, to God be the glory, right? That's amazing. And if, I think, like you said, if we spread that with our pastors that feel led that we need to do a plant, like you just said, it's going to take all of us. And so maybe you can answer this, and maybe I can ask it in a good way. So is the goal to see more pastors in our network say, yes, we want to be part of that, we want to plant a church? Is that kind of what we're hoping for?
And that would be an ideal,
right,
for that to happen. And one of the greatest, you've not asked this question, but I'll preemptively answer it. One of the greatest challenges that we face is the pipeline.
Yes, yeah.
And And so it's great to have the vision to plant more churches. And I genuinely, with all of my heart, believe that the Lord is going to help us do it. But before we can do that, we've got to have the people.
Right.
And one of the things that I shared with our leaders on Monday and Tuesday is I just said, as a church, I don't think there's a greater responsibility that we have than making disciples and developing ministers.
Oh, yes.
Like, period. All the other things are important. But when you think about how do we solve all of this, it's by making disciples and developing ministers. And so we've got to, as local churches, we've got to take that call and own it and develop people. And I think that the larger that the church is, the harder that it can be for some. And so what I mean by that is that the bar of excellence is set at this level for Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And so it's not likely that you're going to let somebody who's never preached before in the church have their first experience on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
So how do we create other environments where people can develop that preaching gift? And so anyway, like that's one of the things that we get to solve is how do we develop more ministers? And I think that I genuinely believe that it starts in the local church.
Oh, yeah.
Pastors aren't born.
Right.
Pastors aren't born at Bible college. It wasn't like somebody went to Bible college and now, where that calling was birthed most likely is in the local church. And so the Lord has given us this window of time to invest not only in the next generation and inspire them to say yes to the call of God, but even for second career people that maybe didn't have the opportunity on the front end because they weren't saved or because they said no to it and chased after other things. And now it's time for them to step into the calling that the Lord has for them. And so super passionate about that. So that's to get to there. So yes, for every church in Iowa to want to be a multiplying church would be incredible. And there are multiple church planting models. And what I've been saying to anybody who will listen, because some are like, dinner church, I love dinner church. And I'm like, great, I love dinner church too, go do it. Others are like, I want to parachute into a community, great. Other churches are like, I want to pack a church and have be the parent church of a church plant in this community. And the statement I've been making is if there was one model that worked exclusively in Iowa, we wouldn't have less churches today than what we had last year and the year before. And so for me, I'm like, let's try it. Let's see what the Lord wants to do. Let's go where the Spirit's moving. And if it's a dinner church, if it's a pack, if it's a standalone, if it's a parachute in. And let's see, you asked about what excites me. Another thing that excites me is the generosity of time and resource that our large churches in Iowa are giving not only to their churches but to other churches, and so sometimes mega churches get a bad rap, and I'll just say in Iowa, the pastors of our largest churches are leveraging their influence and their resources so that churches aren't dying.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's been really fun to watch over the last 15 months as people have stepped in to intervene in a church that's dying, and they're not doing it because to create a name for themselves.
Right.
They're doing it because they don't want to see another church in a community die. And so I just want to throw that out there. That's another thing that excites me, and it's something to celebrate. And I don't think that just has to come from big churches. I think that there are some of our smaller churches that also have the capability to encourage and to multiply as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. I love hearing that about our bigger churches, and you're exactly right. Not just mega, but larger churches always get a bad rap about, they're all about money or they're all about promoting themselves. But I love hearing that about ours and our network, that they're generous and they're looking out for the other churches. Because again, the goal is the same, like we said in the opening. If you're a rural church, if you're a large church, the goal is the same. And the amount of influence this rural town is going to have in their community, that large church, as large as they are, as much money they have, they're going to have probably zero influence on that community as well, directly at least. I wanted to circle back to what you're saying about pipeline and getting people to do that. Yeah. Since I've been here at Restoration Church, we've had one very successful church plant, Beacon Church, Pastor Ben Miller, technically South Dakota. Boo, no, I'm kidding. Nah, we love South Dakota. But what happened was, before I got here, so church planting has always, and this is something I appreciate about Pastor Johnny and this church is church planting has always been on Pastor Johnny's heart and this community's heart as well. You mentioned planting a church, this congregation, they're for it, and not just, saying amen, but financially as well, and I'm thankful for that, right? And so before I started, we had tried to plant one in Ottawa here in Iowa, and things didn't really work out. And so we looked at that experience and said, okay, well, what can we do better? What can we change about the process? And that's when Beacon Church was birthed. And so currently, our one part of our 10-year vision is, like I said, to plant 5 churches in, I can't tell you the cities. You would know some of them. Cherokee's one I know, but I can't think of the others. Sioux Center's the other. And areas that don't have a Pentecostal church is what we're targeting, right? And this exact topic came up. It was Pastor Johnny, Pastor Ben, who is leading a very successful church plant in Beacon. It's a church now, I can say that. And they said, okay, this is great. We need to create a pipeline. And so Pastor Ben, Pastor Johnny, for the past year and a half or so have been meeting, and what Pastor Ben has done is put it on paper. Here's what worked when we planted Beacon Church. And so we're trying to replicate that process in these other towns and see. And like you said, some towns are different, every area is different, every church plant is different. But we have found that is the big thing, is the pipeline, not just the pipeline, but the people to go. And I think it was Pastor Johnny, I'm sure it was, that said something so significant. He's like, let's be honest, there's not people lining up to pastor in a rural Iowa town. There's just not, right? He goes, but there are plenty of people in our congregation who God can tug on their heartstrings and say, you are called, you need to go. And so we quickly realized, okay, if we're just going to create this pipeline and wait for a random person to come knock on our door, hey, are you looking for someone to plant a church in Cherokee, Iowa? We're going to be here for the next 100 years, right? Yes. And so we had put together a process, like I said, a pipeline, and what we've done is we announced it to our church and said, hey, if you feel at all called to, and it doesn't have to be in church planting, maybe just church leadership, be part of this. And they had a regular thing back in the fall, and it was a pretty large group. And from that group, it got a little smaller. And what I'm getting at is we realized the people that the Lord is going to call, they're probably sitting in our congregation. And we have to be willing to let them go. And it's all about what you said, discipling people, right? I was looking at Matthew 28, the Great Commission, which is, church planners love that scripture. Sure. And I'm going to say something, and maybe kind of a hot take. First, I want your opinion on this, and then I'll finish my thought. I think for a long time, I think this is changing. I think for a long time, the church, Big C church, not just assemblies, I think the church had too much emphasis and we were too good at evangelizing, but then we dropped the ball on discipleship. Sure. Would you agree with that? Yeah. What are your thoughts? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
We're good at it, but
yeah, I don't have any disagreement with it. I think one of the organizations that I've seen do discipleship the best is Chi Alpha.
Oh, yes.
They're second to none to discipling people. And a huge difference between Chi Alpha and a local church is the season of life that the students are in and the proximity, right? And so they're between the large group setting, church on a Sunday morning, and small groups, there are multiple avenues for them to be discipled and very intentional about it, and then even one-on-ones. And I think if somebody can crack the code on that in a local church where people have families and they're chasing their kids to every sporting event under the sun in the evenings, and they're getting up early, they're going to work, they're so how do we figure that out as a church? And I think if somebody can crack the code on that, it'll change the face of the church and change the face of our movement. So there are some churches that do it incredibly well, and others, to your point, that make a lot of converts. But as far as discipleship, man, I'll just confess to you, as a pastor in Waverly, our primary avenue for discipleship was in our small groups.
Yeah, definitely.
And trying to get people to commit to Sunday morning in a small group was our primary ask of that. And I think with anything, people, the effort that people put into it is what they get out of it. And so that's the other element as well, is to not to give churches a pass or an excuse, but we've got to do what we can do as spiritual leaders, as pastors in our church, and then we've got to pray that the Lord would birth something deep within the hearts of people to want more, to grow deeper in Him. What are you guys doing to solve that here outside of the program that you talked about?
You mean church leading or discipleship?
Discipleship.
Or both? Discipleship, same thing. We're really focusing on our life groups and trying to get people involved. We're trying to make it not just a thing in the bulletin or whatever, but a part of our community, like part of our language. Because like you said, evangelism versus discipleship, not to get too churchy, okay? Evangelism, is get them here on a Sunday morning, right? Someone that doesn't know Jesus or someone that has strayed away. But discipleship is, like you said, on a smaller level, and like I said, Matthew 28, Jesus doesn't just say go and make disciples, which is great. I think churches love that part, and that's important. I love it. But he also says teach them also how to follow my word, how to live like that. And I think churches need to have a good balance of the two. And I think small groups is a pretty popular thing with a lot of churches today, and I like it. It's great. It's a smaller level, and you can get deeper on that. We actually did a big launch with Right Now Media, the online thing. And to be honest with you, so Right Now Media is a kind of an online tool for churches. It has like videos and stuff. And what's funny is it's been around a long time. So Morningside at the time used it a long time ago, and then we stopped because it got kind of outdated. But then our adult ministries pastor was like, I looked into that, and they have really stepped it up. He goes, let me show you. And he pulls it up, and I'm like, whoa. So there's like all kinds of Bible studies, all kinds of study the book of James, and this video series, they give you study notes. And I'm like, this is perfect for small groups.
For sure.
It's perfect for when men meet or women. And so that's another thing we've done as well here at Restoration Church. And I have seen a big difference in people's spiritual lives, And so yeah. I was also going to ask you, and you may have touched on this earlier, but do you have like a favorite part of your job? Is there something you love seeing the most as superintendent, and when you go to churches and stuff? Do you have a favorite part, or what do you love the most about what you do?
Yeah, great question. One of the favorite things that I get to see is the love that these pastors have for their communities. And we talk about church planting earlier, and 80% of the salvations happening in churches under 5 years old. And yet, on the flip side of that, the other 20% are getting saved in, again, places where ministers have been faithful for decades. And sitting in that room on Monday and Tuesday, sorry to keep referencing that,
no, it's fine.
But it was just a powerful moment. And there's one of our presbyters, leaders in our movement, and pastors, his name is Dennis Niles, and he's in his late 70s. And there's still fire in his belly. And I mean, he planted a church a few years ago. And so, just think about that. And I just looked at him in front of everybody this past week, and I said, in a day and age that celebrates youth, man, I want to honor faithfulness and an elder. And I was down in Hamburg, Iowa. It's the southwest corner of our state. And I met with a pastor that's over 80 years old. And there's still fire in his belly for that community. Like, honestly, I'm meeting with him, and he's saying, the Lord is going to send people here. Revival is going to take place in our community. And he just led the church from moving from one building into another building that's going to serve their needs better for now and for the future. And Pastor Ryan, our next gen director, and I were in Southeast Iowa a couple of weeks ago, and just hearing how people talk about their church in a loving way. Let me just give that clarifying. Hearing them talk positively about their church and the call of God on their lives in different settings. I mean, and so that's one of the funnest things for me. I look forward to being here at the church tomorrow on your big day, and celebrating with you guys of what God's doing. And so I think that's the favorite part for me, is just being on the field in the churches, hearing pastor stories, hearing what God's doing in their churches, and just seeing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's all about the local church, right? No matter if you're in Sioux City or in some other smaller town, if they're hitting their stride doing their thing, that's what we want to see, right? So, Pastor Jonathan, I want to say thank you for stopping by and chatting. This has been fun, getting to know you. Looking forward to hearing you preach. I've heard you preach twice. There was was it a town hall thing that you kind of presented like a sermon?
Oh yeah, network.
And that was my first time. And this is true. I'm not just saying this because the cameras are on, okay? But my wife was there too because the spouses were there. And you started preaching, and about halfway through, I leaned over to my wife, and I was like, this is why his church he was a pastor at 10 years blew up. I said, this guy's phenomenal speaker, and I mean that.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
It's kind words.
Looking forward to tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm looking forward to it as well. And thanks for all you're doing.
Sure.
And honestly, like, it's incredible to see how God's using you and how he's using the church. Justin Lathrop wrote a book called The Likeable Christian. And in his book, he talked about not wasting a compliment. And what that means, I'm going to give you a prime example of it. I was in a setting a number of months ago with Pastor Johnny, your pastor, and he's singing your praises. And so I could have wasted that compliment by just staying with me.
Sure.
But instead, I ran into you at an event and I said, hey, I just want you to know I was just with your pastor not too long ago and he was singing your praises. And so just throwing that back out as well to say you're well respected and loved here. Thanks for all
that means a lot. I appreciate that. I think my response to that was, are you sure it was my pastor? No, I'm just kidding. No. Pastor Jonathan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for watching or listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Or if you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, add this show to your library. And if you could drop us a rating or review, that would be awesome. Love y'all. Shalom.